The sky was not blue that morning. It burned with silver fire as the first of the alien ships broke through the clouds. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up in silence. The ships were massive, shaped like long spears of light, moving slowly as if they were testing the air of Earth. Governments tried to make contact, but before anyone could speak, a calm voice filled every screen, radio, and mind. It spoke in perfect English, soft but commanding. "We are the Valari Dominion. We come to protect your world." The words brought more confusion than comfort. Protect us from what? Still, the sight of their glowing ships hanging above cities and oceans made people believe they were safe. Within hours, the Valari appeared in person. They stood taller than any human, their skin a pale gray that shimmered like metal, and their eyes bright with golden light. They moved with quiet grace, their armor smooth and shining. And when they spoke, their voices sounded like music. They told the world that a danger was coming, a danger beyond the stars. They said humanity was not ready, that Earth was too fragile to survive what was on its way. They offered to shield the planet with their advanced technology, to build defense rings in orbit, to share their knowledge of the universe. Their words were gentle, their faces calm, but something about their silence when questioned made people uneasy. Still, many wanted to believe. The idea of protection from a powerful ancient race was tempting. For the first time in history, every nation agreed on one thing: they would listen. At the United Earth Council, every leader, scientist, and military mind gathered to meet the Valari emissaries. Cameras broadcasted the meeting live. The aliens stood at the center of the Great Hall, light from their ships shining through the glass ceiling. Their leader, a tall figure named High Warden Jael, spoke of peace, of unity, of a promise to keep Earth safe from what they called the coming storm. But as he spoke, Admiral Miguel Reyes sat quietly, his cybernetic eyes studying every word, every motion. He had fought wars before and knew when someone was hiding the truth. When the speeches ended, when all the talk of safety and cooperation had been said, Reyes finally stood. The room fell silent as he stepped closer to the Valari leader. His voice was low but firm. "You say you want to protect us," he said. "But protect us from who?" The question hung in the air like thunder. For the first time, the Valari did not answer. Their golden eyes flickered, and their expression changed from calm to something darker: fear. The silence that followed was worse than any answer they could have given. Around the world, people watching the broadcast felt a chill. The Valari turned to one another, and without a word, they ended the transmission. Their ships drifted higher into orbit, their lights dimming. That night, the skies were quiet again, but it was not the peaceful quiet of safety. It was the heavy silence before a storm. Reyes stood by the window of the command center, staring up at the distant ships. "They're not telling us something," he said to his officers. The world below him was still celebrating, believing they had made friends among the stars. But Reyes knew better. In his gut, he felt it. The Valari were not saviors. They were running from something. And whatever that something was, it was coming for Earth next. Days turned into weeks after the Valari arrived, and the world slowly adjusted to their silent guardianship. Their massive ships floated high above the atmosphere, glowing softly like moons made of metal. They built vast orbital platforms around Earth, calling them defense rings. Every night, people could look up and see the faint lights circling the planet, proof that the aliens were watching. But no one knew what they were truly watching for. The Valari refused to share details about the enemy they had warned of. They avoided questions, their calm voices repeating the same promise, that humanity was safe now. Still, not everyone trusted them. Among the doubters was Admiral Reyes, the man who had asked the question that silenced the Valari. His instincts told him something was wrong. He had seen fear before, real fear, and that was what he had seen in the aliens' eyes. So he did what soldiers do best. He prepared. Reyes formed a secret group made up of soldiers, engineers, and scientists who shared his doubts. They called it Project Horizon. Their mission was simple: to uncover the truth about the Valari and the danger they claimed was coming. Dr. Lee, one of the best astrophysicists on Earth, worked night and day analyzing the Valari transmissions that leaked through the network. Most were coded in strange energy patterns, impossible for humans to understand. But she refused to give up. Then one night, while Reyes and his team watched from the command center, her screen flickered with strange symbols that began to form words. The message wasn't meant for humans. It was a warning from one Valari ship to another. When she finished decoding it, her hands trembled. "They're not protecting us," she said quietly. "They're hiding from something." Her words filled the room like ice water. Reyes's eyes narrowed. He didn't ask what. They both already knew. The Valari were running. Earth was not being guarded. It was being used as a shield. Before Reyes could alert the council, everything changed. A blinding light appeared in the sky, brighter than the sun for a moment, then split into 1,000 blue sparks. One of the Valari defense rings exploded without warning. The blast rippled through orbit, sending debris raining down over the Atlantic. Alarms screamed across every military base on the planet. Reyes rushed to the command window and saw the impossible, a tear in space itself. It wasn't like a black hole. It looked like the universe was being ripped open. From within the darkness, shapes began to emerge. They weren't ships. They were living things. Massive, bone-like creatures shaped like nightmares, their bodies pulsing with red veins of light. The air itself seemed to shudder as they came through, their movement slow and terrifying. Dr. Lee stared at the readings and whispered, "They're alive." The Valari ships panicked. They broke formation and scattered across the solar system. Their calm, proud voices now filled the communication lines with desperate cries. "The Zeroth have found us. All forces retreat." Humanity listened in horror as the Valari, the mighty protectors, fled like frightened prey. The creatures followed, tearing through the Valari fleet as if they were paper. The skies over Mars glowed red as the first human satellites caught sight of the battle. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. And as the Valari ships vanished into deep space, the Zeroth turned their burning eyes toward the blue planet below. In that moment, every human on Earth realized the truth. The Valari hadn't come to save them. They had come to hide behind them. The storm they had warned about wasn't far away anymore. It was here. Reyes stood silently in the control room, watching the dark shapes move closer on the radar. The air was heavy, the silence unbearable. "So that's who they were protecting us from," he muttered. He turned to his officers, his voice calm but firm. "Get me every ship we have. If they're coming for us, we're going to make them remember Earth." And as the first Zeroth ships entered the solar system, humanity braced itself for war. The first battle began before anyone was ready. The Zeroth didn't come in silence. They arrived like a storm of fire and bone. Mars was the first to fall. The human colonies there sent desperate distress calls, screams and static mixed with explosions. Then one by one the signals went dark. Within hours, the red planet became a graveyard of metal and ash. From orbit, Earth's telescopes captured the horror. Vast living ships, shaped like serpents and insects, tearing through human outposts with claws of plasma and mouths that swallowed entire ships. The Valari were gone, nowhere to be seen. Humanity stood alone against monsters that had destroyed empires older than time. But instead of surrendering, Admiral Reyes ordered every remaining fleet to prepare for battle. He gathered ships from every nation, from the smallest orbital frigate to the mightiest carrier, and sent them toward Mars. They weren't ready, but they couldn't wait. If the Zeroth reached Earth, there would be no one left to stop them. The fleet launched from the moon bases in waves, engines glowing blue against the darkness. Reyes led from the flagship Atlas, a massive command ship equipped with railguns and plasma cannons stolen from Valari technology. Among the fleet was the Eclipse, captained by Ava Kor, a pilot known for her bravery and impossible maneuvers. Her crew was young, half-trained, and terrified, but she kept them focused. "We don't have to be heroes," she told them over the comms. "We just have to fight." When the human fleet reached the orbit of Mars, they found the sky already burning. Zeroth warships floated in clouds of dust and wreckage, feeding on destroyed Valari craft. Reyes gave one order: open fire. The battle that followed was chaos. Missiles streaked through space like comets, slamming into the living armor of the Zeroth. Railguns roared, sending slugs of metal faster than sound. The Zeroth screamed back, releasing waves of red energy that melted human ships in seconds. Every explosion lit the void with flashes of blue and crimson. Ships collided, broke apart, and vanished in silence. Ava's Eclipse dove through the wreckage, weaving between dead ships and enemy fire. Her crew cheered when they managed to cripple one of the smaller Zeroth creatures with a direct plasma strike. But victory didn't last long. More of them came. Dozens, then hundreds. Dark shapes moving like shadows across the stars. The Eclipse was hit by a burst of corrosive energy that burned through its hull. Alarms blared as fire spread through the decks. Ava refused to retreat. She rerouted all power to the engines and aimed her crippled ship straight at a Zeroth carrier. "Hold on," she said to her crew, her voice steady. "Let's make it count." The Eclipse slammed into the enemy and exploded, a fireball brighter than dawn. The shockwave tore through nearby Zeroth vessels, breaking their formation. Reyes watched from the Atlas as the explosion faded. He closed his eyes for a moment, then turned back to his crew. "Keep fighting," he ordered. The humans didn't stop. Even as ships fell around them, they kept firing, kept pushing forward. Hours later, when the battle finally ended, half of humanity's fleet was gone. Thousands of lives were lost, and Mars was nothing but ruin. But for the first time, the Zeroth retreated. They pulled back into the dark, leaving behind shattered ships and drifting corpses. Humanity had survived. Barely. As silence filled the comms, Reyes stood at the window of the Atlas, looking down at the dead world below. His heart was heavy, but there was pride in his eyes. They had faced a nightmare from beyond the stars and lived to tell the tale. "Send the message to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them Mars stands no more, but humanity still does." The word spread across every screen and every radio, turning sorrow into defiance. The people of Earth mourned their dead, but they also realized something the Valari never understood. Humans don't run, they fight, and now the Zeroth knew it too. Days after the battle for Mars, the stars seemed quiet, but everyone knew the silence wouldn't last. The human fleet drifted in the cold void, repairing what little remained of their ships. They had won a battle, but the cost was unbearable. Half the fleet was gone, and countless families mourned those who would never return. Still, Admiral Reyes refused to let despair take hold. He spent every waking hour studying what they had learned from the fight, the weaknesses, the energy patterns, the strange organic structure of the Zeroth ships. Humanity had faced the monsters once and survived. That meant they could do it again. But just as Reyes began forming plans for the next move, a transmission arrived from deep space. It came from the Valari, the same beings who had fled the battle. For a moment, Reyes thought of ignoring it, but curiosity won. When the message played, the Valari leader, High Warden Jael, appeared on the screen, his once proud face now marked by fear. "Admiral Reyes of Earth," he said, his voice trembling. "You have questions. It is time for answers." Reyes's expression hardened. "Then speak," he said. The Valari told a story older than Earth itself. Long before humanity learned to walk upright, the Valari had ruled vast regions of the galaxy. Their empire was built on order and peace. But then came the Zeroth, a species born from the dark between stars, feeding on energy, consuming everything alive. They didn't conquer worlds. They devoured them. Planets became husks, their life drained away, their suns left cold and dead. The Valari fought them for centuries and lost billions of lives. When their armies failed, they ran. They erased their colonies, hid their fleets, and swore never to fight again. When they found Earth, a young, noisy planet full of defiance and war, they thought they could use it as a shield. "We thought if we offered to protect you," Jael confessed, "they would see our presence here and turn away. We thought they would not come." Reyes stared at him through the screen, his jaw tight with anger. "You used us as bait," he said. "You came here to hide, not to help." The alien lowered his gaze, shame glowing in his golden eyes. "You do not understand," he said. "No species has ever fought the Zeroth and lived." Reyes leaned forward, his voice low and cold. "Then you've never met humans." His words hung heavy in the air, a quiet promise wrapped in steel. Around him, his officers stood straighter, their faces fierce with determination. For the first time, the Valari had no answer. They simply watched as the human leader turned away. From that moment on, humanity stopped waiting for help. Reyes called every engineer, scientist, and soldier from every corner of Earth. They would no longer depend on alien saviors or run from cosmic horrors. They would fight back with everything they had. Under Project Horizon, humans began rebuilding their fleet using salvaged Valari technology. Ships grew stronger, faster, and smarter. They created new weapons, plasma lances, energy shields, and cannons that could pierce the thick hides of Zeroth ships. The Valari watched in silence as humans worked. Some of them began to question their own fear. They saw how humanity turned grief into strength, how they built hope out of ashes. A few even joined the humans, teaching them secrets of energy manipulation and hyperspace travel. Within months, the Terran Vanguard was born, a new fleet forged from both human will and alien technology. Reyes stood at the head of it all, his voice echoing across every channel. "We are not waiting for the storm," he declared. "We are going to meet it." His words spread across the solar system, turning fear into fire. Earth was no longer the world being protected. It was now the world preparing to defend others. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and soon the stars would remember the name of the species that refused to kneel. The message was clear. Humans were done hiding. The war was only beginning. The war spread beyond the sun, and the stars became battlefields. The Zeroth returned in greater numbers than anyone had imagined, their ships blotting out entire constellations as they moved through space like a swarm of shadows. But this time, humanity was not unprepared. The Terran vanguard, built from blood, determination, and stolen Valeri technology, was ready. Thousands of ships launched from Earth and its colonies, their hulls glowing with new energy shields and their cannons charged with plasma cores. They looked small compared to the monstrous Zeroth fleet, but every ship carried the courage of a species that refused to die. Admiral Reyes commanded from the flagship Atlas Prime, now rebuilt into a fortress of war. Beside him, Captain Ava Kor led the Dawnbringer, the largest and most powerful cruiser ever built by human hands. She had survived the destruction of her first ship, the Eclipse, and became a symbol of human defiance. The soldiers looked to her and Reyes for strength as the final war began. The Zeroth attacked without warning, striking from the dark edges of the solar system. Their weapons were unlike anything known. Beams of red energy that melted metal, bursts of radiation that turned entire fleets to dust. But humanity fought back with fury. The Dawnbringer led the first assault, its plasma lances tearing through the thick living armor of Zeroth ships. Explosions lit up the blackness of space, and the human fleet moved together like a living force, every ship protecting the other. Reyes's voice echoed through every comm channel, calm but fierce. "Hold the line. Show them what it means to fight for your world." The words fueled every pilot, every gunner, every soldier. Even the Valeri, shamed by their past cowardice, joined the humans in the fight. Together they formed a wall of light against the darkness, but the Zeroth were endless. For every ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from the black rifts in space. At the center of their fleet was the Zeroth Queen, a creature older than most stars. Her ship was no machine. It was alive, a planet-sized being covered in red, pulsating veins that glowed like the beating of a monstrous heart. She didn't fight with weapons alone. She whispered through the static, her voice crawling into the minds of human soldiers. She promised them peace if they surrendered, whispered memories of their lost loved ones, and filled their dreams with terror. Many ships went silent, their crews driven mad by her voice. But Reyes resisted. His mind, hardened by war, cut through her words like steel. "You don't understand us," he said through the comms. "We don't surrender. Not ever." The battle stretched for days, each hour worse than the last. Whole moons were shattered, and Earth's orbit filled with debris and fire. The Zeroth fleet began pushing forward, overwhelming the human line. Reyes knew they couldn't hold much longer. That was when Dr. Lee, working from the science vessel Horizon, made a discovery. The Zeroth Queen's ship wasn't just commanding the others, it was feeding them energy. If it could be destroyed, the rest of the swarm would fall. But to reach it, someone had to pass through the heart of the enemy fleet. Reyes gathered his commanders for one final decision. The odds were impossible, but that never stopped humans before. He looked to Ava Kor, and she nodded without a word. The plan was set. They would send a small strike team through the chaos, led by the Dawnbringer, while the rest of the fleet created a distraction. The order went out. The vanguard charged one last time. Hundreds of ships launched themselves into the swarm, drawing fire, sacrificing themselves to open a path for Ava and her team. The Dawnbringer cut through the storm, engines burning white, its cannons blazing. As she neared the Queen's monstrous ship, Ava whispered to her crew, "If we fall for Earth." The Queen's voice screamed through the comms, furious and afraid for the first time. Reyes watched from afar as the Dawnbringer disappeared into the darkness. The last thing he heard was Ava's calm voice before the signal cut out. For humanity. The explosion that followed turned the void into day. The Zeroth fleet staggered, their red lights flickering. Humanity had struck the heart of the swarm, but the cost had yet to be seen. The battle for the galaxy reached its breaking point in a storm of fire and silence. The Dawnbringer's explosion tore through the Zeroth fleet, but the war was far from over. The Queen's monstrous ship still lived, wounded but furious. Its broken body drifted through the void, releasing waves of red energy that tore through what remained of the Terran vanguard. The humans had lost nearly everything. The once mighty fleet was now a scattering of burning wrecks and drifting survivors. Still, Admiral Reyes refused to retreat. From the bridge of the Atlas Prime, surrounded by smoke and flashing alarms, he looked at the dying stars and made his choice. Humanity would not vanish into the dark, not while he still breathed. The Queen's ship pulsed like a dying sun ahead of him, a heart of glowing red calling him forward. Reyes gathered what remained of his forces, barely a dozen ships, and ordered them to follow him into the storm. "We finish this," he said simply, and they all understood. This was the last stand of mankind. The surviving ships formed up behind the Atlas Prime as it charged toward the Zeroth Queen. Around them, debris floated like ghosts, remains of friends and enemies alike. The Valari, inspired by humanity's courage, rejoined the fight, their silver ships darting alongside human vessels. Together they struck the Zeroth lines with everything they had left. Plasma beams cut through the darkness, missiles streaked across the black, and for a moment the void burned brighter than any sunrise. But the Zeroth fought back with all their fury. Their living ships rammed into human cruisers, bursting them apart. The radio channels filled with cries, static, and defiance. One by one, the ships of the Terran vanguard fell, until only the Atlas Prime remained. Reyes stood on the command deck, his face lit by the red glow of the Queen's ship. Dr. Lee's voice came through the static. "Admiral, I found it, the heart of her hive. If we destroy it, the swarm dies with her." Reyes didn't hesitate. "Mark the coordinates," he said. "I'm going in." He left the bridge and entered the drop pod bay where a single small craft waited. He moved slowly, his old wounds aching, but his eyes burned with purpose. The crew tried to stop him, but he only smiled. "You've done enough," he told them. "Keep the engines ready. If I fail, burn this ship into her heart." He climbed into the pod, sealed the hatch, and launched. The pod shot through space, dodging burning fragments and enemy fire until it crashed into the surface of the Queen's living ship. The walls pulsed like flesh, oozing red light and black smoke. Reyes forced his way through tunnels that twisted and breathed like veins. The heat was unbearable, the air thick and toxic, but he kept moving. He reached the heart of the creature, a massive glowing core that pulsed with every beat of the swarm. He placed the last antimatter charge from the Atlas Prime and stared at it for a long moment. He could hear faint whispers, the Queen's voice inside his head trying to stop him. "You can't win," she hissed. "You are only human." Reyes smiled faintly and whispered back, "That's why you'll lose." He pressed the trigger. The explosion that followed was brighter than 1,000 suns. The Queen's ship split apart, the red light fading to nothing. Across the galaxy, Zeroth ships froze, their life drained away. One by one they died, turning into lifeless shells drifting in silence. On the Atlas Prime, the remaining crew watched as the darkness faded. Dr. Lee whispered through tears, "He did it." The war was over. The Zeroth were gone. Humanity had survived. When the surviving ships returned to Earth, the skies were quiet again. The Valari had vanished, leaving behind only a single message carved into the moon's surface. "We will remember the humans." On Earth, people looked up at the stars, knowing that one of their own had given everything to save them. Children grew up hearing the story of the admiral who faced the monsters that even gods feared. And as the years passed, whenever the stars flickered, people would whisper the same words, the question that started it all. "They offered to protect us," they'd say. But from who? The answer had been written in fire and sacrifice. Humanity never needed protection. It was the universe that needed protection from them.